The capital is rife with Cold War paranoia. The government of the day regards homosexuals as a threat to national security.
There was a real concern that gays in the civil service and in the military were security risks, and that they could be blackmailed, in this case by the Soviets.
They were convinced that people could be blackmailed into selling secrets. I mean, that was the official party line adopted from McCarthyism in the States.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul. I'm a retired entertainer.
If you want insight into this period, Paul Fournier is a great person to meet. Now a youthful 64-year-old, in the 60s he was a female impersonator known as Peaches Latour. Security officials saw him as a potential source of information on other homosexuals.
This was Peaches Latour at her best. 27 waist, 140 pounds, and flawless skins. She stood on stage and demanded attention.
Fournier performed in Ottawa area hotels and clubs, earning as much as $3,000 a night. He was openly gay in a city where most homosexuals remained hidden for fear of losing their jobs.
At that time, if anybody was known to be a homosexual and was in the military, the government, in banking, in diplomatic work, they lost their jobs immediately.
We know that about 400 people lost their jobs. And you can imagine 400 people in the relatively small gay community, the out gay community in the city, was horrendous.
An RCMP unit called Section A3 had the task of hunting down homosexuals in the federal government so they could be quickly fired or forced to resign. Plainclothes Mounties spied on men at known gay hangouts, such as a bar at the Lord Elgin Hotel.
The bar in the basement at the Lord Elgin Hotel was famous for being a gay bar since the hotel opened in 42-43.
RCMP and the Ottawa Police used to hide themselves near the Lord Elgin and the Rialto Theatre on Bank Street and take pictures of homosexuals. They were venues that the gays used to hang around, and they used to take pictures.
The RCMP eventually compiled hundreds of photographs, but the men in the snapshots were not wearing name tags, and in most cases the police didn't have a clue who they were. So they went to Ottawa's best-known gay man for help. The constable in charge ordered Paul Fournier to ID the photos.
So he wanted me to put a name to everybody in those albums, and I was absolutely shocked. And at that time they had informants that were paid to attend parties and to bring pictures. There were pictures in their album of my own apartment given by informers, and I refused to give names.
He says the RCMP officer got angry and called him a threat to national security. Other informants were also refusing to cooperate, and following people around was costly, so high-level security officials started looking for new solutions.
We got this problem. We can't tell who's gay and who isn't. We need a homosexual detector. We need a fruit machine, and they called it the fruit machine. That's where it came from.
The fruit machine, which was part of what was officially known as the Special Project, was created in the early 60s by Robert Wake, a Carleton University psychology professor. Wake was a member of a government-funded team that operated in great secrecy. Canada wasn't the only country to build a so-called fruit machine. If you visit the new War Museum in Ottawa, you can find an American device on display. The Canadian version, which was probably destroyed, was more elaborate.
The central focus of the machine was what was referred to as a pupillary response test. This meant that people's pupils of their eyes were filmed or photographed, and at the same time they were shown naked or semi-naked images of women and men, the assumption being that if the pupil dilated when they were being shown a naked image of someone of the same gender, that this was an indicator that they were actually homosexual.
The fruit machine was to be used in conjunction with a battery of other tests, including monitoring nervous response to specific words.
Some of the so-called homosexual coded words, some of them are pretty obvious in terms of drag, in terms of gay, in terms of queer. The word bar was also part of this word association test.
It was hoped the fruit machine and other tests would eventually become screening tools for public service applicants. But the project never became operational. There were constant technical problems, and test subjects were hard to find.
The fruit machine itself never worked, partly because they could never get volunteers. I mean, who'd want to volunteer, right?
The other problem with the technology was that it was based on a series of flawed assumptions, that there was this absolute distinction between heterosexuals and homosexuals in terms of visual stimuli. Bisexuality, for instance, would have completely destroyed the framework of the test. People interested in images of both naked men and women.
It was a very shameful time.
For his part, Paul Fournier describes the fruit machine this way.
The fruit machine, how retarded. They had to be, whoever thought of that was retarded.
Over the years, the fruit machine has been the subject of magazine articles, political cartoons, even a stage play. Alex Brett included the fruit machine in the plot of her latest mystery novel. When she began researching, she had a very negative view of people on the fruit machine team, but she no longer judges them as harshly.
The people who were doing this with the RCMP, they were not bad people. They truly believed that what they were doing was right. And it is very difficult to look back. The Soviets were extremely active in Ottawa.
Boy, isn't it amazing what you pick up?
The fruit machine is now long gone, and it's now illegal to fire someone for being homosexual.
I'm having a great time. And
but people in Ottawa's gay community don't want that chapter in their history forgotten. They're happy the War Museum chose to include this relic, so society at large gains some understanding of what they went through. Simon Gardner, CBC News, Ottawa.